Tájékoztatom önöket, hogy az állásfoglalásról szóló szavazásra egy későbbi plenáris ülésen fog majd sor kerülni. Ezzel rá is térünk a következő napirendi pontra. Paşcu képviselőtársam jelentése a közös biztonsági és védelempolitika végrehajtása tárgyába készült ez a jelentés, és elsőként az előadónak fogok szót adni. 4 percben, tessék. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Before I begin, I would like to welcome the presence of the High Representative at this debate, as usual, which reflects the fulfillment of her obligation of consultation with the Parliament according to Article 36 of the Lisbon Treaty, which should have governed our debate in the first place. If in 2003 the EU leaders were announcing the world that Europe has never been so prosperous, so secure, nor so free, now, 13 years later, they are forced to recognize that we live in times of existential crisis within and beyond the European Union. Naturally, we should ask, why is that? How did we get there? What have we done wrong? But primarily, we should ask, what should we do to respond successfully to these times of existential crisis? And strengthening CSDP is a major component of that answer. That is why the report is of the opinion that a thorough and substantial revision of the CSDP is needed in order to enable the EU and its member states to contribute in a decisive way to the security of the Union, to the management of international crises, and to asserting the EU's strategic autonomy, recalling that no country can face the current security challenges on its own. In the relative benign security environment prevalent until now, the EU and its member states could allow themselves to equate CSDP mainly with crisis management performed in relative distant places. Now the conflicts around us have multiplied and have become intertwined, spilling through terrorism and refugees into the EU area. Security and defence is no longer only a cry for help coming from a proud defence industry confronted with increasing difficulties, like it was the EU Council on Defence in December 2013. Now security and defence is a major, if not even the main concern of the European citizens, which was finally heard by the EU leaders. Consequently, things started to move, and only last week, the implementation plan on security and defence has been approved by the member countries. And that, let me tell you, that surprised us, and we had to introduce a number of amendments in order to sync the report with the realities in the field. Now, the Commission in turn has advanced a number of defence-related initiatives, and for instance, you know, the Defence Action Plan and the Defence Industrial Policy, getting involved in a support of a pilot plan on defence research run by EDA, the only institution we have for that kind of activities whose role would have to be strengthened in consequence, and instilling more flexibility in the instrument for peace and stability. Naturally, this is a big step compared to the current practices. The EU money were not used for defence and is already resisted in this Parliament. However, if we really want to defend our Union, we should be prepared to make this step, because otherwise we would continue to linger on in this complacency which brought us where we are today. In the end, I would mention the relationship with NATO, guided now by the joint declaration signed in Warsaw last summer. The relationship should be one of cooperation and not competition. The EU needs to acquire a degree of strategic autonomy, particularly for situations when it might have to rely mainly on herself. Let us not forget that NATO is a collective defence alliance and not a company whose unprofitable branches could be shut down, born from the lessons of 2 world wars, built with sacrifice by all the member states, and meant to defend and promote the values which brought us together in the EU too. Thank you very much.
Köszönöm az előadónak a nyitó gondolatokat, most pedig a főképviselő asszonynak.
Thank you, Mr. Paşcu. Many thanks. I also consider the debate on your report as a so-called Article 36 debate, since it deals with the implementation of CSDP. And I just realised for this debate, for sure, I should be sitting on the other side of the hemicycle. You will forgive me if, for practical reasons, I take the point from this position. Let me thank you very much, Mr. Pascu, for an excellent report, and all the Parliament for the work you're doing on security and defence. I had no doubt this would have been the case. This is one of 5 reports that have just been published or are about to be discussed on security and defence. And I take it as a clear sign that the European Parliament fully understands the importance of this moment for our work on security and defence. We truly stand at a crucial juncture in our work towards a European Union of security and defence. But before I begin on content, let me say that I am particularly glad and proud even to discuss our common defence just a few hours after the presentation of our sustainable development package. Now you will ask me what for? Exactly because it's not only our work on security and defence that goes forward on the implementation of the global strategy, but it's all the different strands of action that we foresee in the global strategy in an integrated manner that are moving forward on implementation, and also because security in our region depends clearly on sustainable development and also vice versa. So I would like to underline the fact that the debate we're having on this particular issue does not happen in a vacuum, but on the contrary, in full conjunction and in full coherence with the work that we do on other strands of work. But on defence in particular, there is today a momentum for deep and decisive changes. As I was preparing for this debate today, I was remembering that in my hearing in AFET in October 2014, before taking office, we discussed this issue at length. And in particular, I asked my team to print it out, the minutes of that hearing. And I remembered in particular a question that Arnaud Danjean asked me at that time. And I replied, je vais tourner au français, je vais jouer mon rôle de chef de l'Agence européenne de la défense, je vais visiter les missions, je vais beaucoup travailler avec les ministres de la Défense et travailler avec nos partenaires, notamment l'OTAN, mais pas seulement. Parce qu'il y a un potentiel dans le traité de Lisbonne qui n'est pas exploité maintenant, et je vais voir dans les 5 prochaines années si les conditions politiques pour l'utiliser enfin sont réunies. I think we are perfectly there. I think that after 2 years of my mandate, for not personal, necessarily personal skills, but political conditions, first of all, the fact that our citizens see security as a top priority, but also because member states see the need for working seriously on security and defence, I think we are there, at the political juncture where advancing on security and defence is finally possible. As we all know, defence falls primarily under member states' competences, and this is why for each step we take, we are receiving inputs from member states. All proposals are discussed extensively with all 28 member states. Let me stress this, we are still 28 member states, and all decisions we take also in this field are unanimous decisions, including the one we took last week. And this process led to the Council conclusions adopted last Monday, based on the implementation plan that I presented to ministers as a concrete follow-up to the EU global strategy. These conclusions formulate the consensus among, as I said, 28 member states about our joint level of ambition and open a whole new chapter for our security and defence. And I'm also glad to see that our views are almost identical in all fields. Your report addresses all the critical issues we've been working on, and its overall approach matches perfectly with our broader package of proposals concerning the European security and defence. The report focuses on a more robust CSDP, on our integrated approach to crisis, on our cooperation with NATO and other partners, and on the European defence industry. If you look at the 3 proposals we are presenting, they are perfectly in line with your recommendations. It's a package, the one we are working now on security and defence of the European Union. It's a package including 3 different sets of proposals, 3 different pillars. The implementation plan on security and defence I presented and was adopted last week, but also the implementation of the EU-NATO joint declaration that we signed in Warsaw, and the Commission Defence Action Plan on our defence industry. So just to give you a sense of how fast and concretely things are moving, on Monday last week, the Foreign and Defence Ministers together approved and adopted the implementation plan on security and defence. The day after, on Tuesday last week, we met again with Stoltenberg to progress on cooperation with NATO. We presented a joint set of 40 proposals to turn into concrete actions the principles of the Warsaw Declarations we signed jointly in July. And these two processes are obviously autonomous, independent, but running side by side, because we both share the assessment that a stronger Europe makes also NATO stronger. It is clear that in practice there is no contradiction between Europe's strategic autonomy that we state and our commitment to our long-term partners. For NATO members, NATO will remain the cornerstone of collective defence. Strategic autonomy means first and foremost the ability to be a reliable partner, to care about our own security at home and in the neighbourhood, to take our fair share of responsibility and be a genuine security provider. This will also require stronger European defence capabilities, as the report rightly points out, and this need is also addressed by the implementation plan, and I will get to that in a minute. But let me first mention the European Defence Action Plan, which will focus on overcoming the current fragmentation of the market and increasing the competitiveness of the European defence industry. Linked to that is the preparatory action for defence research, to be launched next year. This can be a real game changer for our industry. The starting point is one of our most successful experiences, the Horizon 2020 research programme, that covers civilian and dual-use technologies up to date. A continent-wide joint research programme on defence would be a natural extension of Horizon 2020. We have an immense potential in terms of joint research programmes on defence, economies of scale, and a more predictable time frame for investments. To develop the technologies of the future, it is very clear to all of us, I believe, that we need to start investing now. But a big part of our work can deliver concrete results in also a short time frame. And with the implementation plan on security and defence, we are indeed moving very fast also on this field. So with last week's decision, I'm sorry you had to change the report, Member States have agreed to raise the level of ambition of our security and defence policies. We have agreed that we need to protect our citizens through our external action. Let me clarify here, it's not about having an Article 5 style of approach. As I said, collective defence is not for the European Union, we're not a military alliance. But we need to use our external action and instruments to protect our citizens, also at home. We need to strengthen our neighbours and partners to prevent new conflicts, and we need to respond to crises in an effective manner. So the implementation plan includes 13 concrete proposals to match this new level of ambition that we determined together and we agreed upon, and a clear time frame for action. And it will be now up to the European Council in December, where I will present not only this new level of ambition, but also the different options to put it concretely on the table, to agree on these proposals and obviously discuss them. But let me mention a few of these proposals, as they are, again, perfectly in line with your report. As I said, I will mention a few of them, not all of them, but just to give you a flavour of what we're working on. First, a more efficient defence spending. Most of the narrative turns around the need to increase our spending, but when you look at the numbers, it's true. Europeans spend 50% of the United States budget on defence, so the half of it. But when you look at the output, we achieve 15% compared to what we spend. So we have a budget gap, but we have an output gap we have to look at. And here I have proposed a coordinated annual review of defence spending to promote joint programmes among member states and economies of scale. Second, a better rapid response. We know well that reacting fast is at times the only way to react effectively. Time is not neutral in reacting to crisis. So we already have top-class civilian experts, and we need to be able to deploy them quickly. But it is also, of course, about our battle groups. Next year is 10 years since they exist. So the plan proposes to remove the political, technical, and let me stress, financial obstacles that have prevented so far the battle groups' deployment, including through modularity. Third, a joint planning and conduct of non-combat missions. Let me delete the non-combat missions. We do not have combat missions. We have executive and non-executive missions. But anyway, the joint planning and conduct of our missions and operations. The European Union is currently deploying 17 military and civilian operations. But to make them more effective, we need to improve the coordination among them. The plan wants to fill the gaps and ensure that missions are planned and carried out in a coherent way. So it's not about creating big new operational headquarters, the shape-style headquarter. This is not what we need today. What we need today is to streamline our current structures, make them work better, as we do have already headquarters running our missions and operations. So it's not about creating something new, but it's about using better our resources in a more effective and efficient manner. And, as I said, streamlining and making more operational the coordination among the different missions and operations we have. Last of these few examples, but not least at all, a new permanent structure cooperation. Here again we come to the issue of making full use of the treaties, as I said 2 years ago. A single permanent structure cooperation is an option that is there in the treaties. I suggest that we look into that for those member states that are willing to undertake higher commitments on security and defence. A single PESCO, so it will be one of the options on which I will work for proposing this to member states. For all these proposals, I'm presenting concrete measures, and I would like to stress this. This is a very concrete, at the same time ambitious, but very pragmatic work we're doing. It's not a strategic thinking. We've done this exercise last year. Now it's about turning this vision into action. We're not getting into a revision of the treaties, which would take years, and personally, I'm not sure it would lead us very far in this moment. We are not working on the creation of a EU army, only to get stuck in a never-ending ideological debate. And by the way, not even NATO has a NATO army. Member states have a full one set of forces that can use either nationally in NATO, in the European Union, in the United Nations, in other formations, as all those that deal with defence issues know very well. We have already set up our vision, as I said, with the global strategy. We are now turning the vision into concrete, effective and immediate, I would like to stress this issue, immediate action. And we're doing it together in unity. I see the political will from member states to do so. I see the will to finally move towards a European Union of security and defence. We tried our fathers and mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers tried in the 50s. We know how the story ended. The Lisbon Treaty gave us instruments we didn't use. Probably the priority of managing the economic and financial crisis was distracting us from the security issues. I believe that this is the time for us to be serious on that and work effectively in this direction. And I expect the European Parliament to keep supporting and contributing, as it has done, to this process in a very useful manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Vice President.